Just ahead on American Black Journal, the Detroit financial institution rises in the rankings of minority-controlled banks. Plus, the spirit of Detroit celebrates a milestone birthday. And a Detroit photographer captures the city's beautiful architecture from a different perspective. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
For nearly 100 years, Ally has been a part of Detroit, and we give back by volunteering and donating in our community. We have a commitment to diversity and increasing economic mobility in our hometown. At Ally, we're dedicated to doing it right every single day.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Detroit's first Independence Bank is now the 7th largest African-American controlled bank in the country, according to Black Enterprise magazine. That's up from the 10th ranking just 2 years ago. First Independence is celebrating its 48th year of serving the community, and the bank also has a new chairman and CEO, Kenneth Kelly, who is my guest today. Welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so that's big news. That's a pretty big jump from 10th to 7th. Tell me why that happened. What is it that's fueling that rise up the rankings?
Sure, Stephen. Thanks so much again for having us. We've been very fortunate and blessed here in the city of Detroit to have the support of the leadership in the city. Many of the agencies in the city, we've had some very prominent leadership who has made deposits with us in such a way that allowed us to grow our assets over the last year. And so we're very fortunate and very happy that we were able to move from the 10th position to the 7th position in 2017.
You know, when I say First Independence to a lot of people, people recognize that name because it's been around for a long time here in Detroit. I'm not sure lots of people know that it's a Black-owned and controlled bank.
Sure, we're an African-American controlled bank, and as you may know, our history actually started in the late 60s, right after the riots. There was a group of 20 prominent African-American families who decided we needed to have an ability to control our own financial future going forward. And so it took 2 years to get the bank started. The bank started in May of 1970, and so we're in our 48th year now.
Yes, I know about that year because that's the year I was born.
Okay.
Right? So talk about over time. That's a really different time, 1968, 1970 in Detroit. But the reaction that they had at that time to say, hey, we need to have our own financial institution, we need to have control over capital in a different way, that's still true today.
It is. It's very true, and it's unfortunate in many ways because if you look across the nation, you see the decline of African-American controlled institutions across the country. There's approximately only 20 that are left in the nation at this point in time, and we are pleased that Detroit is standing strong as one of those institutions. So the history, you know, the bank has had its challenges through the 70s and the Jimmy Carter days when interest rates were high, and in fact the control of the ownership was gained by a gentleman named Don Davis, who many know in this community, and his legacy and his trust now still controls the majority interest in the institution. But the reality is when you look at Detroit and the makeup and demographics of Detroit, we are positioned very well to have an institution that can really soar and be a beacon across this country.
The other thing that I think is on a lot of people's minds about banking in this city right now is mortgages, right?
That's correct.
It is still too hard, I think, for people who live here to get money to buy a home. It's hard to get money to fix up a home. Talk about First Independence' role in this changing real estate market and making sure that African Americans have the access that they should.
Yes, one of the challenges in Detroit, and I know the mayor's been trying to address this, to figure out how to move Detroit from a land contract city and environment to more of a real mortgage environment. And the challenge is,
conventional 30-year mortgage,
that's conventional mortgages. And so that's something that we're thinking about on a daily basis and trying to figure out how can we be a catalyst for individuals to move into a home and to buy a home. As you know, as you talk about financial literacy and wealth, the biggest asset that most families will ever have is their home,
your house, right?
Right? And so we know and understand that that is a critical part of financial literacy, and we believe that we want to be a part of the solution to help hopefully evolve this market from a land contract market to a mortgage market.
Yeah. Is that happening? I mean, I see conflicting reports about things getting better and things getting worse.
I would tell you it's moving, but it's moving too slow for most people, is the way I will describe it. And that's going to take a lot of time. You've had many individuals who come into this market and speculate. They'll buy properties, not pay the taxes with the intent of knowing that, you know, it's just a speculation play. And so some of those actually hinder the market from moving as fast as some of us in the financial institutions would like to see that happen. But I can tell you from conversations I've had with others in this industry, there's a concerted effort to see how do we help shape and move this market.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I think about when I think about banking in the city is access to capital for businesses, commercial purposes. Still too tough there as well, especially for small businesses or businesses looking to grow themselves.
That's correct.
Talk about First Independence sort of positioning there.
Yes, our position has been really hard asset lending, meaning that we do lending predominantly on assets, whether that's commercial real estate, mortgages, or equipment leasing in a fairly established business. So it is challenging to get capital. I will just be frank and admit that. One of the things, though, as we talk about financial literacy is understanding the importance of our credit scores.
Yes, right.
You know, culturally, we talk about never being disrespected, but, you know, when you think about finances, one of the ways to ensure that you are respected is to ensure you have a really good credit score.
Right.
And so as we're going to be talking about,
start early.
That starts early.
Right?
That's exactly right. That is a mindset, is a behavior. And one of the things we have to do is talk about this topic a lot more often. I think you're going to see myself and members of our team out in the community talking about financial literacy, because our financial reputation is the strongest reputation we can ever have.
Right.
And when you have the idea to come forward with a business plan, you know, we can be positioned to help you then try to fulfill that business plan. But it is an absolute true statement that the access to capital in this country is challenging, and it oftentimes is more challenging for African Americans.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk quickly about you and your new role. Tell me a little about your background and how you came to banking, and then how you came to First Independence.
Certainly. So I originally grew up in Alabama and ended up attending school at Auburn University in electrical engineering. And so I've spent practically 30 years of my life in the utility space, working across engineering, marketing, finance, human resources, supply chain, mergers and acquisitions, and retired out last year. I was named chairman by the board of directors and moved to banking. I spent about 3 years understanding and studying banking, and it has been more of a passion for me kind of moving forward, because it's a way that I see that I can really impact our community and, most importantly, our culture.
Yeah.
And so as you think about finance and financial literacy in a capitalistic society, money is oxygen.
Yeah, right.
And so one of the things that I believe in is the ability to help people understand from day one, as you said, starting earlier, that if you are treating your finances correctly, if you treat your credit score and your FICO score correctly, it makes life a lot easier in a capitalistic society.
It does. That's how you get ahead. And whether you agree with it or not, that is the system we have.
That's correct, and that is reality. And so, you know, we've been in this seat now for the last, year plus. Been excited. We're excited with some of the things that are going on. Our employees have been loyal and dedicated, and you see some of those results in the way that we have moved from our pre-tax return on assets in the state. We were in the 90s of the fourth quartile a year or two ago, and we're now in the top of the second quartile. Wow. And so that's a reflection of the dedicated employees here in Detroit, and in particular in First Independence Bank.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving up the rankings, and congratulations on your new job.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Stephen.
All right.
Thank you.
Just ahead, the history of the Spirit of Detroit sculpture. But first, we continue our look back at this program over the last 50 years. Here's a 1996 Detroit Black Journal interview with financial expert Kelvin Boston about African Americans' net worth.
Net worth is what an individual or family actually owns after you look at what their resources and their debt. And what you have left is what you own. One of the things that I'm most concerned about is African Americans begin to concentrate on net worth. It's not important or as important to think, do I make $25,000 a year or $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year? If after 5 or 6 years of being in the workforce, if you look at your net worth and it's still $5,000 or $10,000, it really doesn't mean much in terms of what you own and what you earn.
Yeah, you're playing no-win Monopoly, basically.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at the numbers. African American per capita net worth, that is what black people actually own as individuals in the society, $10,651 per capita for black folk. For white people in our society, per capita net worth is an average $51,191. Well over $40,000 discrepancy there. In general, you caution blacks to increase their net worth. How can they do it?
Well, I think we need to start looking at traditional things that has helped all Americans live the American dream. And in our book, we talk about how a family can increase their net worth to $250,000 to $500,000 in 10 years. And we do it by, again, using sound investments that have worked time and time again. These include a financial plan. These include owning a home. These include investing in the stock market. These include buying the right type of life insurance, which I recommend is term. And this also includes owning your own business. And again, if you don't have the temerity to be a business owner, then you should invest in someone else's business through stocks.
The iconic Spirit of Detroit sculpture, one of my favorite things about the city of Detroit, turns 60 years old this month. And the city is celebrating with a free public event at the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center. The Spirit of Detroit was created by internationally renowned sculptor Marshall Fredericks. He made the sculpture for the city to represent hope, progress, and the spirit of man. When it was made, it cost $58,000 to build. It's hard to believe it was that cheap, but today it's appraised at $6 million. Joining me now is Sharon Madison, who is chair of the Detroit-Wayne Joint Building Authority, which owns the Spirit of Detroit. Sharon, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so as I said, this is one of my favorite things about the city is that we got this great statue there in front of the city. I still call it the city county building, but well, now it's the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center. But talk about how we came to have this statue in that place made by Marshall Fredericks, who is a very famous sculptor.
Right. Well, you know, you're not wrong to call it the city county building, even though it's the Coleman Municipal
it's still
Center.
Both, right?
It's still both. And just to give you a little bit background about the building itself, the authority that I chair, joined by Commissioners Lou Jean Nelson and Tom Scott, we are basically the fiduciaries that operate and maintain the city-county building. This was that building was built in 1954.
I think.
And then the commissioners commissioned this fantastic iconic statue by Marshall Fredericks in '58.
And for being 60 years old, he doesn't look so bad, right? We had a restoration project of that recently that makes him look a lot newer.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we've done everything that we knew how to restore and maintain it. You may know that as we started to consider the 60th anniversary, one of the things that commissioners decided last year was that we would not allow jerseys, much to the consternation of a lot of people, other than for championship teams, because the patina of the statue and just really maintaining it's really too important. And every time it's touched, there's a problem. So, you know, we decided not to do that last year.
But still, I feel like if you're a Detroiter, or even if you're a visitor to Detroit, you recognize that statue, the pose, that face, as part of the city. And it's one of this, you know, I say a lot that we don't have a lot of things left in the city that we all sort of relate to in the same way. Some of them have gone away, and of course the region has changed a lot in the way we relate to each other. But I feel like the Spirit is one of those things that everybody kind of feels a connection to. And that's why everyone wants to put their jersey on it, by the way, is that they feel like it's part of whatever sports team that they're celebrating. But I think that's important for us as Detroiters.
Well, it is. And so one of the things that, so when we were having this discussion, because one of the things that just kept popping up, people wanted to put a jersey on the Spirit.
Yeah.
And so then we started looking at criteria.
Yeah.
And the criteria then said, well, let the people decide.
Yeah.
And so as part of our 60th anniversary celebration, which is September 21st, next Friday, right? Everybody's invited to come from 12 to 2 next week. We decided that we would start a program called Show Your Spirit Detroit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're going to be kicking that off next Friday, and we've assembled a magnificent curatorial team that's going to be working with us with students from Detroit schools and Wayne County schools, because we represent all the all of Wayne County.
Right.
And let children create through the arts, whether it's music, dance, visual arts, spoken word, what the Spirit of Detroit means to them. And we hope this will be an annual thing. So we'll be announcing that next week, and we have an amazing curatorial team, including Chris Collins, the executive director of the Jazz Festival, George Anandi and his daughter Zebe, on the visual arts, Tony Smith, who is an assistant principal at the Performing Arts, Eunice Moore, who was coordinating all of this for us, that had is retired from the Detroit Public Schools. Jessica Care Moore, you know, our what I call our poet laureate. So you know, we have a number of people that are engaged in this process that are going to help us allow our young people to tell us, show your spirit,
Show
Detroit.
your spirit, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the 60th anniversary event, which you said is Friday, September 21st, from 12 to 2 p.m. What's going to happen during that?
Oh, it's going to be really exciting. So both of our senators are going to be attending. So our city council, the Wayne County Commission, so that's on the public side. We are very fortunate to have the inaugural Spirit of Detroit band, which newly was just recently the alumni band of the Jazz Festival. But these young people are phenomenal, and they'll be performing. We'll have a poem by Jessica Care Moore specifically about Detroit.
About Detroit?
Yes, and so, you know, so it's going to be fun. So, you know, so we invite everybody to come.
And again, the Spirit is one of the things that I feel like unifies us. And what's cool about it is that that was the point of it when they commissioned it. I mean, as I said in the open, it represents hope and progress. And you think of the things that we've gone through over the years that it's been there. It really is that beacon of our best selves as Detroiters.
Absolutely. And, you know, when you look at the statue, you see that there's two things in its hands.
Yeah.
You know, there's, on one hand, there is this magnificent planet looking, which represents the Spirit of God.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, there's a family.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we are all one family, and that continues. And so we want the Detroit Wayne County building, which is its own authority, outside of the county and the city. But we, you know, what we want people to recognize is that this space, this place, this spirit is theirs.
Yeah.
And we want everybody to be a part of it and to feel that and know that this is their place in the city of Detroit, regardless of whatever else happens.
Right.
This is where we are.
This is a place for you.
That's right.
And now we have, at least for some time, the Spirit of Detroit Plaza right out front. I know that's a little controversial about blocking the streets and stuff, but you know, when I go down there, I see kids, I see families, I see people really embracing that spirit.
Well, you know, Detroit is becoming, you know, the place to be.
Yeah.
And we are doing our part in maintaining our history and creating a new history for years to come.
Yeah. All right, Sharon Madison, thanks very much for being here, and congratulations on the ceremony.
Thank you so much, Stephen. We hope you'll come.
I will absolutely be there.
Thank you.
Finally today, we meet a photographer who captures images of Detroit's historic architecture from a different perspective. In this Detroit Performs report, Brian Day shows how he uses aerial photography to tell Detroit's story. Take a look.
I was initially inspired by the work of Ansel Adams. His incredible attention to detail, especially with the black and white photography that he did, the expansion on tonal range in the images that he created was really inspiring to me. Of course, living in an urban area, I don't have the wilderness and mountains to photograph, and so I try to apply some of those principles from his incredible work in a city environment. The building behind me was designed by world-famous architect Mies van der Rohe. Detroit has an incredible history of architecture with gentlemen like Albert Kahn and many others who designed such iconic buildings here in Detroit that have been replicated around the world and have inspired many other works. And so I've tried to capture some of that work right here in Detroit. I prefer black and white photography because color photography is so pervasive, obviously, in the world today. And there are so many images that can be lost as a result of distractions due to color. So I like to eliminate those distractions and really focus on the quality of the composition, the tonal range, and the subject matter within the frame. And black and white allows me to do that. So I've had a wonderful time photographing my architecture series, but one of the natural limitations of photographing on a tripod is that my perspective is limited. And so I was really excited to have the opportunity to use drones and introduce aerial photography to really take a different perspective on some of these iconic buildings around the city. I try to do a little bit of research before I go out and shoot a drone image. In particular, I'll take, say, Google Maps and look at an overhead view of the city and kind of scroll around different neighborhoods and look for structures and areas that I think might be interesting. And then I try to think of the time of day that it might make sense to go where the light is best so that I can get the composition that I think I may want. But quite frequently I do find a surprise in the layout of a composition that I had no idea was there before I started. So it's quite interesting to discover new things as I shoot vertically with the drone. One of my favorite photographers, Gary Winogrand, who was a famous street photographer, often referred to his images as a problem and solving a problem. And I think that that's even more relevant today when there are so many photographers shooting the same things that it certainly is a challenge to look for a composition, to look for an image that perhaps hasn't been done 100 times before and that hasn't been sort of worn down and desensitize viewers to it. So I do think of my photography and compositions that I look for as a problem, as a challenge. How do I look at this in a new way and maybe present it in a certain way that's more interesting than I have in the past? I like to bring out the nuance of the subject that I'm photographing, but also apply some of my creative thought on the image as well. So I try to stay in between a range where the image has some interpretation, but that it's not lost, the subject is not lost in the frame. So I love drone photography, I love architecture photography, but street photography is a completely different challenge. You can't control any of the variables and factors on the street other than when you press the shutter. And so that's something that I'll always continue to do no matter what other projects I get involved in. I do think that my photography has been influenced by some of my technical training over the years. I've been involved in photography for about 9 years now, but throughout the course of my work career, I've been trained in physics and computers and things like that. So I think that the thinking around precision with respect to my job has influenced the thinking around precision with my photography as well. And maybe some of that comes across in the compositions and the structures and the way that I see things with respect to my images. Part of the reason much of my photography is focused on the city of Detroit is I think that there's been a series of narratives around Detroit's story over the years. And if you go back maybe 10 years or so, the dominant narrative of Detroit was a city in ruins, a city in collapse. And today, in many conversations, the narrative is on the other extreme, that Detroit is just this awesome city and it's completely come back and it's great for everyone. What I think my pictures hope to depict is a balanced narrative, that while there are wonderful things about the city, there are also some challenges that still need to be addressed. And so I hope that people look at the images objectively and can appreciate the balance in the narrative of the city of Detroit.
Great visual story about the city that we all live in. That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. Go to AmericanBlackJournal.org to get more information on our guests and to check out a calendar of community events. Plus, you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.